Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, please.
Great. So I'm Dan Curry. I actually have now moved to India. I work here in a school called Vega Schools. And we've heard a lot of great speakers today talk about some global issues. And even here nationally, we have the NEP, the education policy that's coming out that's really focusing more on these higher order skills, critical thinking, problem solving. How do we train our students to navigate a future that we ourselves don't see clearly? So I'd like to maybe share. For me, it's always helpful. I think about things in terms of what does this look like? What's the practical application for that? And so if I can share my screen, I'd like to take you through some slides here and talk about what it looks like here in my school, and that's Vega Schools. We use a pedagogy called problem-based learning. And I think this is something you may be familiar with. You've heard of experiential learning. That's something that we've talked about, even just the last speaker, allowing our students opportunity to use hands-on experiences in real-world situations. I think that's a key piece. There's also inquiry-based, where we have our students actively ask questions and we ask questions of them. And we see that as well. For us, problem-based learning is kind of the umbrella term for the project-based learning, inquiry learning, experiential learning. This sort of captures all those pieces which we feel pull in both the needs of tomorrow, our students for tomorrow, as well as addressing some of the concerns that the things we've talked about already in this conference. So problem-based learning for us is what it looks like. So hopefully you'll get a sense of what would this look like at a school, or how can we make this happen? Now, in talking about problem-based learning, I'm also going to touch on depth of knowledge, which is something that comes out of the work of Norman Webb, a 1997 report, and then again in 2002, more information came out. So depth of knowledge works together with problem-based learning. How are we going to prepare our students for tomorrow? Well, we have in PBL, problem-based learning, 8 components. Now, this work has been framed by the co-founder of our school here in Gurgaon, by Dr. Steve Edwards. He's a co-founder along with an Indian founder, Mr. Sandy Huda, who has, Dr. Edwards has been a influential trainer, thinker, educationist in the US, and he wanted to see this in action. So he actually started this school a few years ago with this in mind. He's done a lot of work around problem-based learning, and hopefully you find it helpful, some of these pieces. These components are things that we can do in our classes every day. So what does it look like? Well, we start with the driving question. For our students to understand the world around them, to understand their role in their local community, and then in the broader global context, we frame questions that guide the instruction. So an open-ended question that has value might be something like, how do we provide good water quality to our villages in India? So that's a big open-ended question. It doesn't have an immediate answer. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to be multidisciplinary. So it's going to take math and science and social studies and all kind of things. So we have if you start with a good open-ended question like this, you frame the work. Then there's a need to know. Our students figure out, okay, what do we know and what do we need to know? And in our schools, we call our teachers learning leaders, and our students are learners. So that's so that we understand our role is to help the student in self-direction. We heard from Andreas about this, this personalized education. Also, this pedagogy allows for students with special needs to be involved in the whole process, and they're going to be achieving at their own level, but they can still, as much as possible, interact with the world around them in this. What do you know? What do you need to know? An important component here is also voice and choice. Students need to have a say in their education. They're going to become more self-motivated and in designing their own kind of learning pathway here, in having a say, what do I need to do? How am I going to find this answer? How am I going to tackle this big problem? we're preparing them to be problem solvers. Then we have inquiry and innovation. This is where we get the hands-on project work, the experiential learning comes in. And we have, there's lots of resources out there. Our last speaker, Mr. Ramanan, just talked about the what his group does. Lots of opportunities from companies who have hands-on experiences for students. They can come in and create, do maker spaces, apply what they know to the question at hand. The driving question drives everything. As students go, there's always an opportunity here for critique and revision. And this is where all the real work happens. They revise, they reflect, they learn more, they pick up the math skills that they need, they pick up the science skills that they need. All of this is tied to CBSE in our setting, but it can be tied to any group of standards where we're making sure that along the way, the students are getting the hard skills that they need, as well as a driving question, helping to find an answer. What we find is important is that there needs to be a public audience. So students don't exist in a vacuum. We don't exist in a vacuum. We're part of a larger community. So in this, they have opportunities to present their findings in video format to live audiences. They need to be able to express themselves. These are also more communication skills, 21st century skills. In fact, this week in our school, we have what are called student-led conferences, where instead of having a parent conference, the students come prepared to express what they've learned over this previous period, to explain where they have strengths, where they need to focus more. They exhibit some of their work, but they lead. They are the leaders, and they share that for others. What makes the difference in this is there's got to be significant content. So there's lots of ways that you can have experiential learning, but if you're not getting the standards base, if you're not getting the rich content, you're missing a piece. So that content still has to be there. They still need those hard skills. And the 21st century skills, again, that's where they're collaborating in teams, they're creating new things, they're inventing, they're innovating. They are using the technology at hand. And of course, we know they're technology natives in a way that we won't be. They have access to so much information. So we need to help them to understand how to navigate that. Those are the key components of problem-based learning. But the other piece that can be applied to any school in any setting is a focus on Norman Webb's work on depth of knowledge. This maps loosely to Bloom's taxonomy, where we have remembering and understanding and applying some of those pieces of Bloom. This is a simpler way of looking at how much have students attained? What is the depth of their knowledge? What's the rigor? We want to make sure our schools are rigorous as we create these experiences for students. We need to make sure that they actually are being challenged and they're understanding deeply. And here you can see the steps. First level, simple recall. That's a simple, do you remember something? That's rote memorization. DOK2 is multiple steps, maybe a problem that takes multiple steps to accomplish, and they have to do some application there. DOK3, now they've got to do some deeper thinking and justify their response to something that may be open-ended. So a compare and contrast. How is one thing like another thing? And then justify that. That can cross over to more than one discipline. So that's what we're looking for. And then DOK4 usually is a longer term event where typically in a group setting, they're tackling a long-term problem. Maybe the driving question culminates in something that's a long-term project resolution, and they can show that they've really mastered this. Now, what's important to remember is that you're not going to see every DOK level and every lesson every day. But if you frame it correctly, students on all ranges of the spectrum, whether they're in our special needs group, whether they're in our gifted and talented group, they can show us, we give them a challenging question, they can show us how much they have understood, their level of knowledge in their responses. So if they can give us a DOK level 2 response, and that's as far as they can go, that's information that we need, that's helpful. So we need to make sure that we're not just thinking about the activity, or the thing that we're putting out in front of them, we're also thinking about what's the level of complexity? What's the depth of knowledge level that they're attaining in this? How are we providing for opportunities for critical thinking? Those are some of the key components of depth of knowledge, problem-based learning, and how we have taken some of these big ideas and tried to incorporate them into a practical way in everyday life in school. And these steps can be applied in any school, in any setting, keeping in mind students are driving, they're being guided by a driving question that's compelling, that's real world, has real world applications, it's meaningful to them. And we can measure their depth of knowledge by these open-ended questions and by making sure we're crafting lessons that allow for that. That's one way that we at Vega have tried to tackle this future of education where it's critical thinking, problem solving, and many of the things we see in the NEP document here in India. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Dan, once again, and thank you so much for your valuable time and speech. Would you like to say a few words about the award? How does it feel in,
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for honoring me with this award. It is really my pleasure to be here, to learn from these other speakers, to spend time with you, and I always gain more than I'm sure I give in these, but I'm honored by the award. Thank you for putting this together and providing this opportunity for learning.
Thank you so much and have a good day ahead of you.
Thank you very much.